Hi everyone, my name is Zuleika Sheikh and I'm the Uclan Students' Union President. We're here today to present an accommodation Q&A. There are a range of student accommodation options, and where you choose to live will impact your student experience. There is no right or wrong decision, you just need to choose what's best for you. I'm going to be asking our panel today a series of questions which will provide our students with more information to make informed decisions around student accommodation. So I'm joined today by Angela Frodsham, Carol Ann Higginson, Hanifa Desai and Lisa Watson. And I'm just going to ask our panel to do a round of introductions. So first, can we have Angela?
Hello, I'm Angela Frodsham. I'm Accommodation Services Manager and I manage the private accommodation team for our Preston and Burnley campus. Our main aim is to ensure that there's a really good supply of quality accommodation for all of our students, and to use Student Pad, which is a vehicle where students can search for private accommodation that's registered with Uclan.
Thank you, Angela. Carol?
Hello, I'm Carol Higginson. I'm Accommodation Officer working in the private sector team with Angela Frodsham. Part of my role is to visit and register private landlords and their properties, checking that they meet the standards of our registration scheme. I am also a Student Pad system administrator. Another part of my role is to assist those living in or those interested in living in the registered accommodation. And I've worked here now for 25 years.
Thanks, Carol. Hanifa?
Hi everyone, my name's Hanifa. I work for the Uclan Accommodation Service as a customer service advisor. I've been at the university now for about 5 years and I've worked for the accommodation team for 2 years now. My role is primarily supporting students with the accommodation application process. So that's from inquiry stage up to moving in. I also support the on-site residences team who look after our students when they live in Uclan halls. So any questions about Uclan halls I'll be covering today.
Thanks, Hanifa. And finally, Lisa?
Hi, so I'm Lisa Watson. I'm employed by the Students' Union and I've worked there for around about 10 years. I manage the advice team within the Students' Union, which is made up of 3 advisors and myself. Basically, we pretty much do what a Citizens Advice Bureau does, but purely for students.
Thank you very much. Thanks for those introductions. Okay, we're going to head over to our first question, and this one's for Carol. What is the difference between Uclan halls, Uclan registered landlords, and private accommodation?
Thanks, Zuleika. Uclan halls are located on campus and are owned and managed by Uclan staff, and students are issued with Uclan contracts. Students, you'll find all of the Uclan accommodation listed on the Uclan website. Registered properties are located off campus but within easy reach of teaching buildings, sometimes located just across the road. The landlords and properties are university approved and students are issued with a private contract. You'll find all our registered landlords and their properties on the Student Pad website. Private unregistered landlords and properties have absolutely no association with Uclan at all and are not recommended to students. If you find yourself viewing an unregistered property, you must do your own thorough and detailed safety checks. You should be extremely careful, as there have been 2 serious fires in unregistered accommodation in recent months, where the fire detection in the properties were deemed to be inadequate by the Lancashire Fire and Rescue. So the message from us here today is that we strongly advise you to use Uclan registered landlords and properties.
Thank you, Carol. And I'm going to head over to Hanifa for our next question. When and how should I apply for Uclan accommodation?
Okay, yeah, so for students who are looking to apply for the 2020-21 2021-2022 academic year. We haven't opened yet for applications, but we are expecting to be opening in the new year towards the end of January. So we would advise you to get in touch with us via email at studentaccommodation@uclan.ac.uk to find out when we're opening in the new year. When we are open, the application is all done online via the website. The URL is www.uclan.ac.uk/living@Uclan. The application is really straightforward. You will be asked to rank accommodation choices from your most preferred to your second or your third choice, and you can view all the accommodation on the website. So that's uclan.ac.uk/accommodation. We have three principal types of accommodation: economy standard, premium standard, and ensuite, starting at £77.21 for the economy, £89.60 for the premium, and then £108.15 for the ensuite. That is for the current academic year. We do expect prices to fluctuate a little bit year on year. As I said, we are hoping to open for the new intake of students, hopefully in the new year sometime in January, and you will be able to apply online. So in the meantime, we'd advise you, if you are thinking about university accommodation, just to have a look on the website at the photos and at the virtual tour as well.
Thank you, that's really, really helpful. And just moving on from that, can students live in Uclan halls in their second or subsequent years as well?
Absolutely. So we are a little bit unique at Uclan, where we do allow students to stay on in university halls of residence beyond their first year. So we do have a lot of students who decide to stay with us all the way throughout their time studying at Uclan. You do need to reapply each and every year for accommodation. However, for returning students, as we call them, we do open for applications a little bit earlier, and we do invite them to reapply, normally sort of in the December period, December, January, where we would open for the new intake of students sometime in March. You can apply for the same room if you want to do that. You can apply to live with friends. You can put friends' names down on your applications. And you can stay in the same room, or you can go to different types of rooms as well if you want to do that. There are lots of benefits for staying in university halls throughout your time studying at Uclan. We offer all-inclusive rents. We offer peace of mind in terms of our on-site residences team, who offer a lot of support to our students. Of course, all of the Uclan campus is covered by the lovely 24/7 security team as well. So we are more than happy to welcome returning students into our halls of residence. And as I said, if you want to stay with friends, you can put each other's names on your applications, and we would do our best to allocate you to a flat where you're all together.
Thank you, Hanifa. That's really, really helpful. And this one's for Angela. When should you start applying for private accommodation then?
There's a huge amount of pressure from private landlords to students to make them sign up early. And often this pressure starts from October onwards, when really the new academic year has only just started and you're only just getting into this academic year. It's way too early to be thinking about next academic year. Particularly if you're a first year, you need to take time to meet friends and make sure that they're the people that you want to live with next year. And we don't think that, October, November, it's far too early. The Students' Union and the Student Accommodation Service strongly believe that end of March is probably a good time to start looking. By that time, you've been here 6 months and you found your feet, Preston a little bit better or Burnley a little bit better, and you're in a better position to start looking. There's plenty of accommodation for all students. It's very close to the campus. There's a range of rents to suit all budgets. And one of the other main things that you need to remember is that once you sign a contract, then it's too late to change your mind. So you really, really need to look at lots of different properties, make sure that you're happy with it in every way before you pay any money or sign a contract.
From the Students' Union point of view, if I could just reiterate exactly what Angela said, it's something over the years that as the Students' Union, we've been working really closely with the accommodation team to get that message out to students that there is absolutely no shortage of accommodation in Preston and in Burnley. So it is really important that you don't listen to the landlords that tell you have to sign really early, because it makes a big difference to, if you've got that chance, and it's something we're working really closely together with the university on.
Thank you. Thanks, Angela. Thanks, Lisa. That's really helpful. I'm going to come to Carol for our next question. How should I apply for university registered accommodation?
So to apply for university registered accommodation, students living in Uclan halls this academic year will be sent an email to advise when the student pad is going live. We're expecting it to go live around the 25th of January, and we'll also give you the password to access the website. For all other students, so those living in private halls or houses, or those commuting from outside the area, can email privateaccommodation@uclan.ac.uk to request the password. The students will also receive a guide to finding private accommodation. It contains lots of useful information and advice, and we would say that you should take your time and read this booklet from cover to cover. There are only 22 pages, but once you've read it, you will be much better informed. So to recap, to find registered properties, you'll find them on Student Pad, and you'll be given a password to access it. So how do you book the accommodation? You'll find private halls of residence on the site with their contact details and photographs of the various types of rooms on offer. To book your room, you'll contact the landlord direct, and you can ask questions or any kind of questions that you might have. The landlord will then direct you to their own website so that you can view all the details about the rooms and then book your room online. So you can book private halls online. Private houses and flats are just a little bit different. They're advertised on Student Pad, and on the Student Pad it includes in the adverts all the contact details for the landlords, along with photographs and videos of the properties. To book the accommodation, you would contact the landlord direct, and at this point we'd advise you to view the property before signing the agreement. But depending on the COVID-19 restrictions in place at the time of booking your room, you may or may not be able to visit the property. However, landlords are doing everything they can to show you their properties. Not only do they have photographs of the properties, they now have videos, virtual tours. Some are doing Zoom and WhatsApp viewings, and some are using YouTube videos. So landlords are also moving over to email and online contracts. In most cases, you will be signing up digitally.
Thank you. That's really thorough. Thank you, Carol. That's really helpful there for our students to provide them with the relevant signposting for them to make the right arrangements for their needs. I'm going to come to Lisa now from the Advice Centre at the Students' Union. So a lot of people have heard of the Students' Union, but they don't necessarily know, everything that we do or what services are on offer to them. What role does the Advice Centre play at the Students' Union to support students' housing issues? And what are the most common concerns you tend to support with?
Okay, so the Students' Union Advice Centre is there to help students with any sort of issues they have with their housing. One of the things we take very seriously is that we can inform students of both their rights and their responsibilities within that tenancy agreement and within the accommodation that they're living in. We can also support them with any issues that they're having regarding their property or with their landlord, and that can be either in halls, in private accommodation, and that private accommodation we will support them to whether it's registered accommodation or not registered with the university at all. We're also members of an organisation called NHAS, which is actually part of Shelter, which a lot of you have probably heard of. So through them, we also have access to very specialist housing advice. As with all the sort of things we deal with at the Advice Centre, we also work really closely with the elected officers like yourself, Salika, And that's so that we can make the officers aware of any trends that we're seeing that may affect the student body as a whole. Some of the issues we deal with really regularly are to do with the conditions of the property. It may be to do with breaches of the tenancy or to do with the student's statutory, therefore legal rights. Often the students wanting to end their tenancy for all sorts of different reasons. Students often have difficulty paying the rent. And we've also come across quite a lot recently to do with landlords not having the correct licenses that they should have in order to rent out those properties.
Thanks, Lisa. That's really interesting. I think it'll provide a bit of an overview of what we offer and what students can come and get support with at the SU should they need to. So thanks for that. I'm going to come to Carol again for our next question. What happens in university halls if students want or need to leave before the end of their contract? Oh, I just unmute Carol. It's okay.
So what happens if a student wants to leave the contract? This is probably something we get asked about quite a lot. The contract is a legally binding document, and it's legally binding for the full period of time stated on the agreement. So if you've got a contract for 43 weeks or 45 weeks, then you're tied into that agreement for the whole period of that time. Normally, a replacement tenant has to be found before you can be released from that contract. If you've got extenuating circumstances, such as an illness or you're going to withdraw from the university, you can submit extenuating circumstances with supporting information to the hall's manager, and that will then be considered on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, Carol. I'm going to come to Lisa first for the next one, then Angela to contribute for the university perspective. So housing contracts can be quite lengthy, and there may be terms in there or clauses that students don't fully comprehend. What support's available through the Students' Union Advice Centre for this before students commit to signing on the dotted line? Do you offer contract checking, for example, and how can students contact you? So we'll go to Lisa first.
Yes, so we will check students' contracts at any time at all, but what was really crucial that you just said there was ideally before they sign on the dotted line, because we can always tell students what they are bound by and what is the legally binding terms within those contracts. But obviously once a student has signed that, then as Carol just mentioned, they are bound by that for the whole period. So we would much rather that students came to us before they signed that, then we can discuss it with them and make sure that they are fully aware of what they are bound by, but also what they can expect from the landlord from that contract as well. So it's really important that ideally we check that beforehand, because once they're bound by it, it can be very, very difficult to get out of. Very often with private landlords, no matter what the reasons are, they just won't even consider it. So please contact us before you sign an agreement. And the best way to contact the Advice Centre in the first instance would be by email. Our email address is suadvice@uclan.ac.uk.
Brilliant, thanks, Lisa. And Angela?
Yeah, the only thing I would add really is that if a landlord gives you a contract to have a look at, I think you should read it yourself fully first. Don't just bring it, to the accommodation office or to the advice centre and say, will you read through this for me? I mean, you need to understand all the terms yourself, or at least you need to read through them. And if there are any terms you don't understand or you're not sure, exactly what they mean, then by all means come to us and we will do our best to explain those terms to you. And again, as Lisa says, the main thing to remember is don't sign it unless you're sure. You might occasionally hear a break clause mentioned, but to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen a break clause in a student contract. So, you know, you can't just give a month's notice and leave. I think you need to take it that you are bound by that full number of weeks that are stated on that contract. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Angela and Lisa, for that. I'm going to come back to Carol on this one. In January, we are expecting a new cohort of students to arrive in Preston and Burnley to commence their studies at Uclan. What options are there if they choose not to live in halls, and where can students get more information from?
Okay, Uclan's registration scheme in Preston and Burnley advertises off-campus accommodation. This comprises of shared houses and flats, which might suit students who want more independent living. All of these properties can be found on the Uclan Student Pad website, along with photographs and details of the facilities in the property. Availability changes throughout the year, so you should check the Student Pad website regularly for updates. And you can also contact the accommodation team for advice or information, as we may know of new landlords who are due to register. If you want to, contact us, our email address is privateaccommodation@uclan.ac.uk.
Great, thanks, Carol. I'm going to come to Angela for our next question. Since we're now using technology a lot more, landlords are using the opportunities, you know, Carol mentioned before around WhatsApp viewings, for example, and trying to engage students with potential students with online property viewings. What advice would you give to students on viewing properties solely online?
Well, as we have said before, we do recommend that students find university registered accommodation. So all of that is advertised on Student Pad, and there is an awful lot of information already there for students. And the majority of landlords have either virtual tours of their sort of halls of residence properties. And as Carol mentioned, you know, they are becoming more inventive with showing students their properties, knowing that in these times it's not possible usually to actually go and physically view somewhere. If you have any questions at all that are not on Student Pad, then the email addresses and all the contact information for landlords is there. So just contact them. Most of them will be very helpful and friendly and only too happy to give you all the information that you need.
Great, thanks, Angela. I'm going to come to Angela, Carol and Lisa for this one, around what key things should students ask landlords when viewing a property face to face? So there are a range of, you know, things that you might need to ask them or want to check on. So we'll go to Angela first on this.
Okay, well, one of the main things you need to check is if you're going to see a house, this won't apply in halls of residence, but in houses, there are landlords who offer joint tenancy agreements rather than a single tenancy agreement. Now, university registered landlords are forbidden from offering these, but in the unregistered market, they're very common. And we don't advise them because if it's a joint tenancy agreement, it means that all the tenants, so say it's a house for four, all four students sign one agreement. And that means you are jointly and severally liable for that one contract. So if one student goes home, the remaining three are liable to pay the rent for that property. So that's one thing that you really should make sure of, what type of contract the landlord is offering you.
Great, thanks, Angela. Carol, can you come in on anything that you want to add? Oh, just on mute, sorry.
Yes, it would be a good idea for students to ask the landlord if they can see the electrical or the gas safety certificates. Another thing to check at the property or to ask the landlord about is to ask what exactly is included. If students are currently living in the property, they might have their own belongings there. So students viewing a property shouldn't assume that, you know, everything that's in the property is what the landlord's provided. They should ask the landlord which appliances are provided. A student might bring their own microwave, so you wouldn't want to assume that the landlord's provided that. So a good question would be to ask what is included.
Thank you, and we'll head to Lisa.
I think what I would say is ask as many questions as you can and as many questions as you want. You're going to have loads of questions to ask, and just remember, no question is a silly question. If it's something you want to know, then you've got every right to ask that. And if landlords aren't happy to answer it, then that might flag up a few issues for you. But the really obvious ones that spring to mind for me are things like making sure you are absolutely clear which bills and utility bills and Wi-Fi bills are included or not included. If they say bills are included, see if there is a cap on that. That's a really common thing that we come across. Landlords will say the bills are included but don't tell you what the cap is. And maybe make sure that what contact details you're going to have for the landlord or for anyone that may need to do any repairs, so that you've got those right from the start, because if you have any issues, you need to be contacting somebody very quickly about it.
Great, thanks everyone.
I was also going to add that quite a lot of students off campus have cars. So it's definitely worth asking about parking, and in Preston certainly there's a lot of residence parking where you might have to pay for a permit. So if you are wanting to bring a vehicle, then definitely ask about parking.
Yeah, that is a really good point. Thanks, Angela. Okay, I'm going to come to Angela and Lisa for this one. Sometimes students experience difficulties with their landlords. Where can students go to for support? And we're going to go for Angela for this one first.
Well, university registered landlords are expected to be professional at all times with students, and generally speaking they are very good, and most of them have worked with the university for a long time, and we have a good working relationship with them. If students have a problem with the landlord and they do come to see us, then it's usually fairly easy to resolve. We will just contact the landlord and get to the root of the problem and resolve it like that. It is more difficult for us if that landlord is unregistered, because we don't know them, we have no relationship with them whatsoever, and normally we would then pass those students on to Lisa if they want some support or representation. We can give advice, general advice, but more often than not, then they'll be going to see Lisa's team.
Great. And Lisa, do you want to come in then around what you do?
Absolutely, it is very much with the unregistered landlords that we do tend to get involved with them, and we can obviously initially inform the students whether there is an issue with what the landlord is doing. We can then contact the landlord on their behalf and support them in that. And just one other contact that I think is always worth mentioning, we do refer students very often to the Environmental Health Department at Preston Council as well, because if it is an issue that may be something like rats in the property or that sort of thing, which unfortunately we do come across, that's also a really good contact to have. But students can always come and talk to us, and we can deal with the landlords on their behalf or refer them to the more appropriate person.
Thank you. I think that's really great, and it's great for our students to understand who they can go to for those certain issues. Okay, the next question is, I'm going to answer this one. I've struggled to really get to know anyone since September. Have you got any advice on how I could find housemates? Okay, so at the Student Union, we've launched the UME app, and we've partnered with UME, and we have 300 students who've used this kind of app, and it's partnering students with other students who share similar interests. So I think you put your course and your hobbies, and then that is a great way for you to make friends with other students, so that you possibly be able to take those conversations onto another platform and possibly make those friendships for next year if you're choosing to move into a different accommodation. We've got a Facebook group that you might want to join, which is www.facebook.com/groups/Uclan Christmas on campus. And we're wanting to make sure that students are being able to connect with other students over the Christmas break, so that they can build those friendships going forward into the new year. So do get involved in those two apps and websites, and hopefully we can see some great things from that. Okay, and we're going to go to Hanifa for the next question. What support have Uclan been providing for students who had to self-isolate due to COVID-19 in terms of food, mental health support, for example?
Thanks, Zuleika. So there are two types of self-isolating students. There are the students who are required to quarantine after arriving from a country that is not on the travel corridors list. And then there are those students who were required to self-isolate either because they'd either showed symptoms of COVID or because they were contacted by NHS Track and Trace. We've been supporting all students in both of those kind of categories. In terms of the international students who were arriving and had to quarantine upon arrival, we made sure that each of these students had a bedding pack, a basic food pack and a kitchen pack on arrival, just to make sure that whilst they've arrived from wherever they have, they've at least got the bare essentials to get them through the first few days. We made a very handy Halls COVID-19 guide where students were given information about online grocery shopping, how to open a bank account. Some of the bank accounts in Preston, some of the banks in Preston were allowing students to open bank accounts online, and just lots of useful things like that. In terms of the students who were requiring to self-isolate due to symptoms or because they got contacted by NHS Track and Trace, again, what we would do is we provide the students with food for the duration of the self-isolation period, a toiletries pack just to help them with cleaning and that kind of thing. And also each of the students who were required to self-isolate due to symptoms were contacted each and every day by a member of the residences team, either by phone or over Teams, just to see how they were keeping. Any students who were particularly struggling with the self-isolation, which some students were, they were referred over to the wellbeing team, who were able to offer a little bit more a little more thorough support, be that counselling or be that additional welfare checks. So we have been very hands-on with our students when they have been having to self-isolate. We've been facilitating the delivery of any grocery items, any parcels, anything like that as well. All the students do benefit in University Halls because they have the on-site residences team who are just a phone call away if they do need anything as well.
That's brilliant, Hanifa. It's, just goes to show, when things happen out of the blue, for example, COVID, we can pull together as a university and work with, the accommodation teams working with the wellbeing team, and everything's seems like a joint up approach, and students are well and truly supported should they get into any difficulties there. So thank you for giving us an overview of that. Okay, we'll go on to our final question. I'd like to ask the panel what your top pieces of advice would be for students looking for housing. So I'm going to go for Angela for her top tip.
The first thing I would say is that make sure that you can afford your accommodation before you book it. There's such a wide range of different prices. Some accommodation literally costs double other types of accommodation. So you might have £75 accommodation or £150 accommodation per week. So you need to make sure that you can afford to live and buy all the other things you need, as well as pay for your accommodation. That's the first tip. And my only other one is make sure that you know what you're doing before you sign a contract. The Student Accommodation Service and the Advice Centre are here to help you. So never be afraid to ask any question contact us by any means you want, by email, phone, whatever, and we are here to help students. And so don't think it's a silly question, just phone us up and ask us anytime. As I said, that's what we're here for.
Thank you, Angela. Hanifa?
So my top tip is if you do decide that you want to stay in university halls of residence, we do offer excellent value for money with our all-inclusive rents. We do have accommodation to suit all budgets, so we would highly recommend that you consider university halls of residence no matter what your year of study is.
Great, and we're going to head over to Carol.
So I would say take your time, don't be in a rush. You might not be able to view the property in person, but use the checklist at the back of the student guide to ask landlords lots of questions.
And finally, Lisa.
I think I would say go back to the property, whether that's in person or on an online visit, as many times as you want to check as much out as you want to. Absolutely reiterate what Carol's just said about not rushing into anything. So just keep looking at it and look at as many properties as you want to. Never presume anything at all, which I think we've said a few times, and just make sure you check everything out. And also, once you have found that property that you're going to move into, when you do that, ask for an inventory and take your own photographs when you move in and when you move out as well, so that there can be no arguments about what was included and the state of the property, both at the move in and the move out stage.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think, yeah, there's some really, really important areas you've highlighted there and are really going to help students make sure they have a clear picture of what to do when they're embarking on looking for accommodation. So just to kind of sum up, really, it's really important to just do your research. Staff at Uclan and Uclan Students Union are here to help you, so don't be afraid to really reach out when you need that additional support. Do visit www.uclan.ac.uk/accommodation for more information around Uclan halls accommodation. Visit www.uclan.ac.uk/accommodation/private_registered.php for more information regarding private accommodation, which has all the relevant signposts in, including landlord's responsibilities, tenancy deposits, and questions to ask your landlord and more. And that the Students' Union, our free independent confidential advice centre, offer advice on housing, accommodation related issues with lots of key information and relevant signposting. So please get in touch if you need support by emailing suadvice@uclan.ac.uk, and you can find more information at the website at www.uclansu.co.uk/housing and accommodation. We also understand, students express stresses and struggles with their housing contracts and landlords, etc. The university's counselling, mental health and wellbeing team are here and are continuing to provide support for students. You can contact them by emailing wellbeing@uclan.ac.uk, or if you have an emergency that does require immediate assistance from Uclan, you can contact security on 01772 892 068 or contact security through the Safe Zone app. So I just want to say thank you so much to Angela, Carol, Hanifa and Lisa for participating in the Q&A today. It's been really great and some really great tips for students to take away and reflect on before they actually embark on, looking for student accommodation. So thanks so much, and everyone take care. See you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.